approve the meeting agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion has been approved of the meeting agenda. Moving to the approval of the September 17th, 2020 committee meeting minutes.
Motion to approve the committee meeting minutes.
Second, and are there any comments to those minutes?
I have none.
Okay, neither.
Oh, thank you, sir. Let's see. Okay, so we have approval in second. So, Holly, are you on?
Here, sort of.
I'm on.
Okay, Holly's on.
Okay.
Okay.
We just seconded the minutes. Do you want to vote on approval?
We're going to vote to approve
Yes,
the
I
meeting
can
minutes.
second. Oh,
Okay.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion has approved to approve the meeting minutes. We're moving on to old business, and the first thing is the school board professional development. And personally, I would like to thank all the board members and Missy and everyone that set everything up for us to have Charlene Green come and do the cultural sensitivity training that we need as a board. I think our conversations were good. I thought the topics were good. I actually was kind of surprised myself. I got to attend the one that Stafford County Schools offered, and then to attend this, there were just still so many differences and things that I was able to pick up. So I really appreciated her coming to do this for us, and I appreciated the board taking time on a Friday night to participate in this event. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just want to say thank you for setting it all up. I do appreciate the time Ms. Green took in presenting giving us her presentation. I think it's really beneficial, and I think that I think we did have good conversations, and I think that there's a lot that we need to look at moving forward, but it certainly gave us a foundation to build on.
Dr. Kisner, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I thought it was very good. Just so you know, of course, you're welcome, maybe you already know about it, but tomorrow from 11 to 1:30, the National Equity Group is doing their second training for our administrative staff.
Okay.
I could, I'll have Roxanne, it's virtual, of course, so I'll have Roxanne send you the link if you're interested.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. Holly, did you have anything you wanted to add about the Charlene Green professional development we did?
No, I thought it was great. I mean, I've seen her before. That's why she's always been pretty high on my list of people. I think, there's more going forward. I think there's more things that we need to explore as well. But I think Dr. Warner and Susan, you both said, it was a great start. But it's sort of then where do we want to build on that, going forward.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. The next is the November 18th and 19th service events. It's coming up in conversation that originally what we had thought to do was have Dr. Kisner and his cabinet and our elected school board members either do a dinner or a service event. We leaned towards the service event, but as we got into the weeds, if you will, of trying to figure out the details of it, it became a little worrisome that we might be putting both the attendees as well as those of us attending in maybe a little bit more harm's way than we thought or intended. So then Dr. Warner and I were speaking and trying to figure out still how could we save this and solve this. And one of the ideas that she had was potentially doing something still with those dates in mind, but maybe doing something at Rising Star and North Star and having us hand out the boxes, maybe boxes of meals as opposed to serving the meals, and potentially including books as a way of incorporating some literacy, or even crafts that could be more, could be like a coloring page or an easy hands-on project for the kids or families to do together, that we could work one evening at one school, or we could do both at both nights and just split us up, however that works. But that way, we're working outside on sidewalks, putting things into cars, as opposed to in a building where we then have to clean it and serving food and making sure we're all compliant with space and, cleaning practices and that sort of thing. So that was an idea that Dr. Warner thought we could do to potentially still save the event, and so I wanted to put it up there for discussion and thought for our group, and see what you thought. Holly, what do you think?
What I was going to mention is every year the cafeteria ladies, or the group down at Melcher's, does this kind of event, and it's going to be a drive-by this year of it's hot food. And they are thinking of doing it that Thursday because we usually miss it. I've usually missed it because we've been down at the VSBA. I believe my understanding is that they are going to continue with it this year, but they use the Melcher's kitchen because the kitchen at Rising Star is not, actually it's not as big, so it would only be a Melcher's event, and they usually do a RSVP so they know how many, dinners, but we would be outside loading it into people's cars. It'd be a drive up, but I think adding a book or some activity or something to, each of the cars, so I think we could tag on to that, but I would say I think we would need to limit. We may not want to use the huge number of people because first I'm not sure that they're needed, and because some of the staff down there are always a part of the event. But I think that the board members and a couple top cabinet would be invited. But I don't think we need
all 20.
We don't, because if there won't. I think then we will run the social distance and other issues because we'll be falling all over each other. But
right.
I believe they are doing that event and are going to be beginning to take the reservations for that coming up. Now, Dr. Warner may find out more when I know at the Head Start Policy Council, but that's a pretty annual event. And when I had talked to a parent who I know is involved in there, she said, I think we're going to do it again, but it's not going to be as, it's going to be a put in the car, that kind of event.
Now, when they do that, Holly, are they still going to service the entire county for those families that attend both places?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And they've always had to pick up at Melcher's. Really, they said it's because with the staff, they know that kitchen and it's bigger to be able to do it. They've got kind of the rhythm down. That there are some challenges that may have been fixed, but at the Rising Star one, if you've been there, it's they know how to do it at the other one as well.
Okay.
Anyway, and I know that their cafeteria and food services staff really enjoy this event and putting it on. So it's sort of just being on the assistant side of doing something that I believe our staff is already excited about doing, but that's why I think we can't overload it with people, would be my thought.
Now, are there ever going to be people that don't have the transportation and therefore need things brought to them? Do you know?
I think that would have to be worked out probably with Kathy and their family casework, just to make sure that everything is handled, but I don't think that's a problem. It's sort of like maybe that's the additional service we can offer by having some more people available. But, that would, I think, need to be coordinated with and making sure everything, runs through the Miss Massey and the case where family service where all those people.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Yes, it does make sense. Thank you. Dr. Kisner, what are your thoughts?
I was going to say something, but now I realize they probably don't do it that late in November. If we joined like Food Security Inc. that has this well structured and, is it outdoors the way they do it?
Yeah, I think he stopped.
But he stops,
Yeah.
I'm sure, by November, so.
Yeah.
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 Well, I like the idea of piggybacking on a project that's already up and running.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of makes it a little bit easier for us to tag into. I think that certainly the addition of a book and maybe an art project or something that we can enhance this with might be something that we look at. And then perhaps one of the things that Ms. Randall and I had spoken about was the idea of maybe even delivering some of these meals using a bus and a few staff to actually take some of the meals to some of the communities and deliver them
If there
in
was an
person in addition to what's going on at Melcher's. So I think that this might be the way to tap into that service project that we've been looking at. And I think certainly those who could attend would be great. And, we certainly wouldn't need the staff that we would have if we were trying to do this all completely on our own. So I think this is a viable option.
I mean, I think the idea of getting,
And unlike Dr. Warner, who can put off a great event, I can't cook, so you really want me to be out there handing stuff out.
I think if November, and I understand November, there's too many unknowns. In the spring, I still think it's something, I really thought it was a great idea having cabinet staff and the school board doing.
Something together.
So we don't, I guess in the.
Don't lose sight of that.
What's that?
Don't lose sight of that.
Yeah.
Family literacy night. When we get them started, we'll pick a night.
Yeah, I'm saying, let's not make this a self-imposed
Yeah.
restriction, like if we don't do it now, we don't do it another time. We can
Yeah.
always
Well,
do it.
I don't think that there's a rule that says we couldn't do it more than once.
Yeah.
So especially those who are unable to participate this time.
Yeah.
If we did one in the spring, I think that might be
Yeah.
and then we could work with food security.
And, true. And, because I think that, the goal of this is obviously for us to get ourselves more into, I think, a working relationship even. Having staff comfortable with us and we're comfortable with staff and just getting to know each other, outside of business, if you will. Not necessarily to like book vacations together or anything. I'm just saying just to get familiar and friendly. But then also to be able to do something for the county that, we all work for and, let people see us out and about and doing what we do. I think that's good too.
Maybe just offer one other thing that I did with another school system with school board members and staff. Now, this would be something where, I'll just tell you what we did.
Put up your microphone.
The microphone? Yeah, I didn't know, okay. What we did was, we came in on a Saturday. A lot of people do this, like the PTOs, but it was great when the school board did it. We painted a school that needed a lot of TLC.
Yeah.
And it was fun. I mean, it was, work, of course, but it was fun also. So, that's just something to think about.
Yeah.
There's different projects that don't necessarily have to evolve around food.
Yeah.
Where there's some limitations when we start talking about food.
Right. Or even doing like the outdoor cleanup of
Yeah.
if we chose one of our properties or something to do some landscaping, exactly. I mean, we have plenty of scouts, both girl and boys, that are doing projects that need sometimes extra assistance, and, that might be something that we could do. Again, because we're outside, it's a little easier for us to be socially distant and helpful. Well, hello there. So. I can paint. She can do that. Yeah.
Paid, yeah, that's where I'm talking. Although I love to eat too, so we're paid to eat.
Yeah, we'll order pizzas.
I can plant flowers, but I can't guarantee that they'll stay alive.
Oh, yeah, I'm not. I'm all for complimenting everybody, and I'll haul dirt. I like to haul dirt.
I like digging in the dirt, I'm not good with plants.
Yeah, so I think something like that would be, yeah, I mean, and again, springtime, making, maybe we'll just to put all the schools in for a contest and try to, get one and go work on it, I think that would be really fun.
Maybe a student essay or something.
Yeah.
Why does my school need a facelift?
Yes, that'd be fun. So, okay, so I think that for the 18th and 19th, if you could coordinate with Miss Massey and just ask her,
Yes,
how
I'll-
many of us and times would be helpful, and then we'll coordinate maybe with staff more about putting together the kits that would contain books and some of the art, handcraft art things.
Yeah, I'll talk to Brian Williams again then,
Okay.
and specifically about this service project. And then I'll talk to Ms. Massey and say, how many people would we need?
Okay, perfect. All right. Does anybody have anything else? Go ahead, Holly.
And it's my understanding that they have done this like pretty much every year. They usually do the Thursday because it links with Thursday and Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Everybody can remember. So I think it's going to be a Thursday night, but maybe if people want on Wednesday night, if that's to assemble, like
Yeah.
you said, or
Especially if we do the art kits and the books, we could
assemble on Wednesday. And I think that Brian and their staff have supported it in the past, and they budget, as I understand, even Dr., that the workers, they get, this is something they do, but it's actually, they are paid to be, which they
Sure.
should be. My thought would be is maybe if we are doing delivery, we may get more takers, which
Yeah.
would be great. So Dr. Kisner, is it okay if we say to Chris if they need a little bit more, because we may be feeding more families? I'm sure we can find it somewhere. That's what I figured, because I know Ms. Massey from before that it's somewhat in her budget.
Yeah.
And all that, but if
We're willing to transport, that might increase.
and Dr. Kisner's going to help.
And I
Chris
just want
can
you to
help
know what
on it.
I'm doing, I'm going back and forth with Chris to get the CARES Act memo to you guys, so I'm working.
Oh, good. No, and I figured, and then you can say, and you may have to find,
Oh, yeah,
knowing
Chris, by
Brian.
the way, set aside some
No,
money.
well, and the school board budget has money for when we used to do the Board of Supervisors and our joint literacy night. So there is some money in even the school board.
Yeah.
We could do it, we could do that, or, there are a lot of community partners who want to donate,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah, but we're sort of getting into a time crunch, I think. But we
It
could
depends on how
certainly
many
look at
we
that.
need, so,
Yeah.
it would be
So
ordering.
really, it's the number is the most
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Because I think,
Like what's in her budget versus if we offer to
What?
deliver, does that increase that number that we then need to cover?
because if she hadn't maybe anticipated either needing bus drivers or something like that, I know through transportation you all will make it work, but I'm just saying, I do know that it is, some parts of this, or most of it, is already planned in her budget. I
Right.
think it's kind of the enhancements.
Right.
Maybe we just want to make sure we can figure out how to fill, because we'd like it to be even more success, I mean, not more
Yeah.
success, but if we can deliver that May,
An extra piece. if
an
you
extra
will. Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
But I do know that she, from at least years past, and knowing Ms. Massey with the budget, I'm sure she kept it in there with the hope that
Yeah.
at some point we would be able to do that. And then really, I really hope that they can get back to some literacy nights in the spring.
Yeah.
I don't know, but we'll
I know.
see. Or, so that's still
And-
something we have as a
And then that
joint
may be
venture.
something that we try to, tap into in the spring if we can figure out a way to do it as well, so. Okay, does anybody have anything else to add to that? Okay, moving
that's
on to the
exciting.
next piece. Superintendent and board clerks' performance evaluations. One of the things Liza had sent out to all of our board members is the recent information from the evaluation that she attended at workshop. And Liza, do you want to, she was talking to me about how under COVID, it could be done even a little differently and a lot lighter.
Well, one of the things that the presenter talked about in the VBSA seminar was that evaluations could be done like as an interim, that's not even official. It doesn't have to be an official. And it would be especially amenable for something like COVID, which is kind of what we're trying to umbrella this under. And I think then we would get on track with normal evaluations and normal real goals and regular things. But I think that might be the best way to handle it. And that was my recommendation anyway when I spoke to Ms. Randall and after I attended the seminar. But I think that definitely we need to have it in writing and I think label it as an unofficial interim evaluation based solely on, based on the COVID response, which has certainly been a learning curve for all of us.
But it just kind of gives us a chance to get ourselves back on track and doing what we're supposed to do too. So one of the things I was wondering, Ms. Hazard, is we had already sort of preliminary got a lot of, things already structured out. And so based on that, maybe you could write up and maybe we could just finalize brief, loosely, I would say, on Tuesday.
Yeah.
If that would be possible.
I think that Tuesday, I'm sort of looking at, and Dr. Kisner and I have broadly discussed, I hope it's a conversation.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what we want it to be. We have a
Yes.
few areas that we've all talked about of what we're all looking for. We also want to hear from the superintendent too, because I like how you're talking about the interim, because that can craft after that conversation
Yes.
where we go for the spring.
Yes.
So yes, I think it's a perfect, because we may have all 7 board members available on
I
one
know,
night.
I know.
That we could add that on there, and I know that we owe Ms. Hall
Yeah.
some feedback as well. I would like to make sure that we do
Ms.
that.
Hall, you're doing a wonderful job.
Exactly.
We were just talking about that before.
Exactly. So it's not that, but you also deserve to be able to be
Yeah.
talked to, and
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, so if we wanted to just put that together on Tuesday, and like I said, it just gives us, a place to start so that come June, we can roll into what we should have been doing. And, everything has been off for us, but I think we're in a good role to get back on to what we're supposed to do.
And I think it's a conversation that should happen every year, actually twice a year or 3 times a year anyway, in my
Yeah.
opinion, that there should be a closed session for everybody to chat in general. We have to make sure, because I think that that's important for everybody. And
Yeah.
as much where the superintendent also sees things that we may or may not be seeing and how we can react well as a board. So, like I said, I don't think of this as hours. I think it's a
Yeah.
really solid, great half-hour discussion of, where we're at, where we want to go within an evaluative model so that it is covered by the exemptions.
Yes, and also I think it's a good opportunity, again, for us as a board to, have an opportunity to work together with our superintendent, because we have a lot of work to do, always, but it's just nice to be able to comfortably work together, so. Okay, so we'll look at that then on Tuesday. And then the structure and streamlining of the school board committees, we were talking about that we wanted a flow chart, so she put one together for us. So I thought we could go over it, if there's any adjustments or things that you'd like to see it done differently, so that we can pass it along to the board for them to look at and maybe bring it up at our next board meeting for them to, have it, and then for discussion, and then we can bring it forth in November for a vote. So, go ahead.
I have a couple of little things. So, under the Governance and Board Development Training Committee, which I kind of the governance board, the lead in may take the lead in development of board goals, and I just wanted to add as proposed by the standing committees. Those are things that maybe should funnel up
Yes.
towards that committee. Under strategic and operational planning, I thought transportation should maybe be added.
Oh, Yeah, that would be good.
And then, under performance monitoring, I thought that security in the SROs and the memorandums of understanding should be added. And then, under external stakeholders, you've got legislative committee for the Board of Supervisors. You meant school board or both?
I would just put legislative committee.
Legislative committee,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would just
Okay.
take off the BOS and just leave it legislative.
So that's my 2 cents. That's it.
With regard to transportation, and maybe I didn't take what the consultant said, that would be a board committee,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I'm just trying to, and I'm not trying to,
I
add
thought more it was kind of to review the policies and to look specifically. I actually have
yeah.
transportation policy. I think it's more to look at these things and make recommendations. So, and I thought it fit more under the strategic and operational planning.
How
Than
often
it did.
should
But I don't think it's-
transportation policies be looked
Right.
at?
But it's just it's this one silo, and I don't think it is something that needs to be looked at all the time.
Right.
But I think as issues come up, I think it's nice to have it assigned to a group to say, okay, this is your job. You know, if you could look at this policy, if you could look at this and bring it back to the full board.
Right.
And so that's the only reason I was kind of considering adding it in light of the transportation audit. And in light of the fact that, you know, there were some recommendations that I think are worth discussing in that audit.
Dr. Kisner, how often are transportation policies generally looked at?
Well,
it-
I really think the broader question is how often are our policies looked at?
All of them.
Lisa could probably address it better than I can, but one
Okay.
thing she's already started is well, I don't need to speak for you.
Well, the policies have to be reviewed at least every 5 years.
Okay.
So we do have a lot of them that have not been reviewed in the 5
Okay.
years. And this is how I took it over last year, but last year was kind of focused on student code of conduct and that big project from the
Yes.
state, which part 2 is coming up for next year. They're already working on it. So I am working on a plan with some various department heads to review their section of policies. And in looking at this, I was wondering if perhaps under each one of them, there could be, you know, policy review that pertains to whichever section.
Okay.
Because some of these policies, and you can chime in, Dr. Kisner, it may be better to be vetted by a smaller group of people.
Right.
Before you go to the bigger group.
Okay.
So that perhaps some of those burning questions can be answered before it's presented to the board.
Okay.
That was kind of what I was thinking about transportation, and I was just trying to figure out which policies might fit best under each of these categories, because I didn't want to, even though it's not done annually or even biannually, I wanted to make sure that we weren't overloading any particular committee with this type of policy work, which is often not very fun.
No. And the only reason that they could be reviewed more frequently is if the law changes. So you
Right.
have to bring it back to update
Right.
the law.
Yeah, just 2 quick observations. I think I mentioned this last time. I would highly encourage, besides distributing this to the board members, and I really do think it requires a work session, because
Oh, yeah.
I just feel like, you know, there might be, you know, whatever. I think just so everybody understands and there's agreement. The other thing I just want to mention real quickly, because I see you have strategic planning as ad hoc, which is very appropriate. But, you know, I'll just use this as an example, like the day school program committee, we've met one time in 26 months, okay? Now, I'm just wondering if that, you know, like becomes ad hoc, because this is I think maybe that almost falls to the external stakeholder relation, because that committee meets with the Board of Supervisors.
That's right.
It's not just a school board function. So, you know, I'm looking at that
That's
one
true.
as an example that maybe you want to shift. But I do think, you know, some of these, and that's the one that pops up first to me, is one that seems to be on an as-needed basis. But that, I don't even know, it's been so long. I think it was like my first month here we met, and then we haven't met ever since. So it may fall, but the other thing I just want to mention also, how do you see the External Stakeholder Relations Committee? Why would they actually meet? Are you saying that these people, that committee, they are on all these committees? Like, would that committee be your 3-on-3 committee, your CTE? I'm just trying to get a sense, like, what would be their role? Because that would be something you do at the regular meetings, you present out, like,
I'm not sure why CTE Advisory Committee is there,
I'm
because
just trying to
that's
think, like.
one of the,
I thought at the last meeting you had discussed the fact there are two advisory committees that are required by law, CTE and special ed. And so I thought that was why they were on here together.
Well, no, I'm not even, I mean, I'm not disagreeing to have board members, I'm just saying, like, if this committee got together, what would they be doing? Would they actually just be reviewing what people, I'm just trying to, because the 3-on-3 committee and special ed advisory committee, these are all committees that
separate, yeah.
are separate.
More what I think the externals and, external, I think it's external stakeholders, I don't think it's and. I think this committee is basically supposed to, and from the things I've read, is supposed to serve as a way to make sure that, say, for instance, we can set a goal of, make sure, everyone on the board gets to at least one school event in a quarter. And to making, they're helping to make sure that we're visible and part of the community and listening, whether we do like a listening tour of our own, or that's the understanding. And then if we have an opportunity to work with the Board of Supervisors in that we show up to some place together, like a community forum, and it's in our district, that we're there, that we're listening or participating, whichever we're being asked to do. That's more what I understood this to be, and so,
And I'm not disagreeing, those are very important functions and responsibilities. I'm just trying to think, like, again, maybe I'm being too
Practical.
literal on this.
I think you're being
Yeah.
too literal. I think the goal is that that these committees maybe meet, the people maybe meet quarterly or something, or virtually, just to kind of give summaries of things that are, to connect us to the community better and to make sure that we're visible and meeting obligations within the community, but not necessarily that they would have to have a monthly meeting, or even, I think it's more a way to try to organize these groups and maybe even have a hierarchy so that we aren't losing information that maybe we need.
and making sure in the community that we have consistent messaging, if there's, or addressing of concerns, like, for instance, like when you were talking about how you had in writing and in thought a perfect plan to start kindergarten and the lessons you've learned from, the few schools that have started. And I think sometimes that it's easy for us to become a little, I don't want to be rude about it, but like self-absorbed, like we understand what we're saying and doing and in our minds how it works, but then when you go out and you're on the phone every day with people and getting feedback and response. So I think it's kind of important for us to make sure that we're at least putting ourselves in a position where we're listening, whether, like I said, we're showing up to a PTA or a PTO event, or we're able to get into the school for, if we all get back into this again, assemblies, or just to make sure that we're listening and learning and bringing it back and making sure that we as a board aren't working in a silo of just board members and not as part of our community and constituents.
No, s-
Again, I'm not disagreeing with anything, and maybe I'm just having a little hard time figuring out how we post that meeting, and what would it look like if there's only 3 members and there's 7 board members, like how, but if you guys understand better than me, that's more important.
Well, no, I mean, I sort of, I mean, I do agree with, I think some of the reach out into the community, I do think is somewhat on the board member. I mean, I'm not sure, I mean, I think the governance part is you need to attend so many, that's something we agree on, I think, as a board, personally. To me, I look at this as really external stakeholder relations committees. I actually think of it as it's a grouping of the committees that have joint responsibility in the community. And I just think of that as more of a top part, because I'm not sure if the legislative committee is going to talk to the joint school, I'm just not sure. But to me, I feel like that's the committees that are external. And I think we start with sort of breaking these down, and then I think it's going to evolve over time. Because I'm not sure that, I feel like kind of every board member interacts with their community or tries to, or if it's that we want somebody helping us find additional activities in the schools. Right now, things are different. I think that's a discussion that we as governance want to say to Sandra or others, of saying, can you make sure that board members are notified of certain big activities going on in the schools? And that may be a role that several of us have talked about, but then again, we had COVID come, so it monitored that. But I think of that as sort of external committees, as opposed to kind of one committee, because I can tell you, these are diverse
Oh, yeah.
people. And I think starting it that way and kind of letting that evolve, but it does kind of say and recognize this is an outreach and collaborative part of the board, if that makes any sense.
I think that's kind of what I was trying to say, is that we recognize that this is an important part of what we do, and we're trying to figure out a way to incorporate that so that we're getting that information from those different groups, like that's being shared. Like Dr. Chase gave a report on the governor's school, that this data is filtering back to the other board members, even though we may not be participating in those things. So I don't know that it's necessarily a group that meets, but it's definitely groups that have to kind of make sure that we're sharing information in a way that's useful. So
See, there's a class you have to take when you become a superintendent that's called School and Community Relations. I wonder if that's what you're really speaking about, is community relations, I'm just,
Communications.
It says stakeholder relations. Community stakeholders. So-
I mean, again, it's more important that you guys understand it than I understand it.
I think we're trying to just figure out a way to make the board work more efficiently, especially since we don't see each other every day, and we're not like in a regular business environment where you might have meetings or that are more regular, and that we see each other on a more regular basis. So I think sometimes communication gets a little bit lost between us individually, and especially between some of these committees that may be doing things that we aren't necessarily being made aware of in a timely way. So I think that's kind
I want to say something, and please take it the right way, because I have to think about this all the time also. I mean, there's a lot of good literature on that. Very effective organizations don't have that many meetings, so so I just offer that, so you could have meetings and still not get things accomplished. So I think the conversation to have with your fellow board members about, the role and responsibility and the reasons why we need to be visible and listening, and accessible, I think must take place. And I know everybody's got different, situations they have to address, but I still think it needs to be.
I know,
seen as a
like,
focus.
when I served as PTA president, I tried, I had no idea how to run an organization, and I was just sort of thrown in. And I remember I kept thinking, well, how often are we supposed to meet? And then they were like, well, we have these big events. And I thought, oh, all right, we'll just meet before the big events. I found that if we did not meet every 4 weeks, like all of a sudden the little bicker stuff, the people getting their feelings hurt, I didn't know about, and all that started happening. So it was literally every 4 weeks we met, because at week 5, no, things would just start to fall apart. So it was just the consistency of when we met, it was at 4 weeks, and that was it, every 4 weeks.
And this would be my one last thought, which you know is not true, because I'll always have more thoughts, but, so, I mean, you may want to think, and this may be a conversation you have with the new governance structure, what do we really want to speak about during board comments? I do think that some feedback I hear periodically is like, sometimes, everybody does their own thing on it, but maybe you do want to touch upon, and most of you actually really do this, but that's a great opportunity to speak about events and other things, to give it some structure, because sometimes, it's a little hard to follow some of the comments, and maybe just having some things that maybe we would want to consider for, Holly's been working with me on my superintendent comments, to be honest with you. No, I don't want you making fun of me, but so I think, if, my first year, I would say a lot more. Now I'm like down to, very little, unless, there's something, like COVID that's taken,
A life of its own.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to at all to give a suggestion. I don't think this is important. I think it's critically important. I'm just would like to work with you to figure out what is.
And I think
approach.
even to have an idea of it right now is really hard, because I think in the past, I remember listening, and every member had so many different events they were talking about in their schools that they'd go to, and it's not like that right now. And so, it always was very school focused. I remember hearing so much about, and now there's just not the opportunity to do those things. We talk about programs or, that were being offered in the schools, and you just can't, it's not there right now.
Well, I think one of the things we have talked about is having a work session, because we realize this is, to try to realign the.
And we are having one
the-
for this, right?
Right, I believe that there is one
The
that we
last-
talked about.
We have a work session scheduled for this?
You do, actually, on the 27th.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah.
And just a closing comment on, or maybe not closing comment, but anybody who's known me knows my biggest thing is telling the story. And if I had to pick this committee to come together, I would want to be working with our communications staff, because the way we are most effective is if we're all on the same page. We're not going to be on the same page on every issue, but I would say we are probably on the same page on broad issues of, there are 30,000 students, there are about almost 12,000 elementary students. I mean, like fact sheets. Now,
Yeah.
I'm a digger, and I will pull that stuff when I speak to my PTOs and I speak to other places. And I have created a lot of my own documents on Heartwood growth and all kinds of different stuff. But it's also, what are like the basic facts we should know? How big is our budget? How much is debt service? Because we always get slapped with that by the Board of Supervisors. That kind of stuff. Our
people
buildings are on
spending?
average X years old. Our average, I would love that kind of sheet, and I've done some of that kind of stuff, because I never throw out a piece of paper. My husband would really like me to get over that problem. I have boxes of stuff from the school board meetings. But a lot of that stuff, when I've needed it, I've been able to pull some really cool facts. If I had to pick what I think would come out of this is a communications piece for talking points, basic facts, because I would think, and please know I'm not advocating this, dropping some of this on, like, I'm not going to ever say really Stafford talk, because I'm not on there, but saying sometimes when people, what are some basic facts about our school district? I bet there's a lot of people who don't even know them.
True.
And I don't know how well we know them.
People that don't know what the day school is,
Right.
Yeah.
really.
and we serve X amount of students. I mean, like truly basic facts. I mean, I think if anything were to come out of this part over the next little bit, I think the separate
Sort of like a
Groups.
did you know, kind of thing,
and
about
so
us.
that they can be dropped, and we can drop them, that information, but it's similar information. So I throw that out, that was where I put kind of communications, but it's really having briefing sheets that are on, the basics. I mean, I'm sure, Dr. Kisner, when you came here too, you've gotten to know a lot of them, but I'm sure still for you, if somebody said, what is this percentage, or what is that? It would take us a little time to find
A
it
lot of
potentially.
He phones a friend.
A lot of school
Or
systems,
text a
and I
friend.
thought we had it, but I could be wrong. I thought, have something called, like, school system at a glance, facts, they, on
We
their
used to have
website.
something like
you
that a
could-
long time
They
ago.
did facts on the run, but it was done for the budget.
Yes.
And it was always during budget season,
Yes.
which is an important time to do it.
Yeah.
But to me, when we open school, gosh, when we want to start talking about the CIP, the average age of the high schools in Stafford is, okay, I could probably do that one. But those are just kind of nice little facts, because sometimes I think we get so in the weeds when we're talking, which we need to be, but if the community and others don't understand where we're coming
Broad
from the
picture.
big picture, personally, I think that is one of the most important things that the school board
I
could
think that's a
do.
great idea, and I think you could maybe set a goal to have it, and it's more than the budget, in your budget book that you submit to the Board of Supervisors, and of course, we'll have it on our website, multiple ways. Yeah. I just think the board needs to give maybe a little bit more direction exactly of everything. Some things are very easy to lift from the DOE, other things would just be things that we have to create internally.
You don't really want my list.
Yes, we do.
A list, but,
Well, no, a lot of it, I actually know where you can get it. It's really just running some of those numbers, because like when we start looking at, replacement cycles, I mean, just really
I mean, you're
basic
talking
stuff.
even, like roofs. Oh, good Lord.
buses.
Tracks, look at how, I just was shocked when I saw the 3 hours, how many tracks need repair. There's just a lot of these things, and
And purchasing all these Chromebooks. I mean, we bought a lot of buses at one time, and therefore, came a little bit hard to replace. But we're buying all this technology at one time, it's all gonna have to be replaced.
There's also I would think as we look at transportation, I think there's some ways we could start to craft that. Our buses on average every day travel
Blank miles.
500,000 miles, 200,000, 20, okay, they're coming to Hartwood, okay, and then they're going to Liza's area, so they're covering a lot of tracks, but kind of giving some idea of the usage and the depth and the breadth of Stafford County, because there are people that live in Hartwood who,
So let me just say this.
does that make any sense of
That makes
why I'm
more than
trying to
fair.
be,
So the thing that you, as a board, and I think it's more than maybe just a board, but definitely 7 board members, because you have 7 ambassadors. So you get all this information, then you have to talk about your communication strategy. Who is the audience that we're bringing this to? Okay, and who's gonna deliver the message? So that's why I do go back to, I think what Susan, all of you have been saying, is critically important to remind the board, this is their role and responsibility, and you do go to your local PTO meetings, and you do go to, your Rotaries, you have to do that, because otherwise we'll put together a very nice document that only 7 people, maybe the superintendent, Chris, and a couple other people will know. So, because I've seen a lot of these great documents, and you see this a lot of places. You go to an office, you see the document, then you look at the date, and then the date was like, 2016, and it's 2019. They made so many copies, and nobody's picking it up because nobody's really interested in that document. So
it's a
I-
did you
I-
know?
Yeah.
It's a did you know? Did you know our buses travel? Just throw it out as a little stat. Every once in a while, a big picture of a bus. Just beginning, because right now, with many people also very focused, some focused and some giving up, social media, there is an opportunity to reach people with really basic facts that
Yeah.
we may not, that aren't so basic, but not everybody would know. Some of us have been, immersed in it. But I think transportation, especially in areas that we see coming up, so I'll name them. I'm going to name mine. Transportation, because we're beginning to relook at things. So let's push out some information ahead of time, as opposed to when we start to hone in on, let's make some decision, and there's no context. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to read it, but we might begin to, get some of that. CIP, you already know where I'm on that, so I've already kind of given some of those there. And then spending on our let's just break them down.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think the more we can message broadly before we're fighting over, but you know what I'm saying?
We're giving the detail, we're talking about details, but we haven't talked about all the background. And most people don't know the background. They don't know all the pieces that we have looked at. So they don't understand why we're doing what we're doing, because they're only looking at this much of it and they're missing this much of it.
Mhm. And that's kind of where, and I think if that comes out of re-looking at our board and getting that, because also as new board members, I'm sitting with the two of you all, you all came, you got COVID, you got the COVID come, and I said, you would
Perfect
be
time.
drinking from the fire hose. And you all are amazing, but there's a lot of probably nuts and bolts stuff that it would have been nice to have kind of a
You think?
crib sheet.
Let me ask you, I'm curious on this question. It's maybe a little bit off topic, but I am curious about this. Since COVID has started, and you all read your VSBA briefings, and if it's not in VSBA, it's in the Washington Post or the Richmond paper. School boards are getting slammed with hundreds of people coming to meetings and sharing their thoughts, okay?
Yeah.
Why, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, I'm actually using the theory that's actually a good thing, that people are either trusting us, they know what's going on, but those two girls that spoke last Tuesday, on this past Tuesday, they were really the first speakers we've had in months.
Yeah.
And I'm always expecting, I'm just being honest with you,
I
maybe
know.
it's my paranoia, maybe that's another issue I gotta deal with now, is like, I'm expecting to see like a lot of people at these meetings, and,
Screaming one way or the other, yeah.
it's not there. So, and then you read about, if you read yesterday about Loudon, if you read what's going on in Fauquier County, and, I mean, it's everywhere. And then, and what we do know, because we've experienced it twice, and you've experienced it a lot more, because you've been on the board, a longer, I'm not on the board, but you've been here a longer time. We've had issues where a lot of people did come out. So when they want to come out, it's not like our people are not like paying attention.
Yeah.
I'm just interested in my mind, I'm trying to just understand, like, why has it been
Quiet.
quiet,
I don't know, a lot of people have told me that they appreciate the questions we ask when we're on the board, and a lot of times we're asking the questions that they're curious about, the things that they want to know. So I think that especially since nobody has a real roadmap for COVID, there's certainly been complaints, but for the most part, people appreciate that we're trying to do what's right. And I think that so most of the feedback I get is positive, even when they disagree.
Well, I think too that, it always is the whole thing of safety first. And I think that has been messaged very well by you and your staff about how much safety and what is being done, specifically what is being done about safety. And so I think when you keep safety first in trying to educate their kids, and safety first when we bring back sports, and safety first when we bring back, the elementary, middle, and high, I think that when you hold that in a high regard, they may have anxiety about it, they may have indifference about it, they may have high opinions about it, but they're intently listening to make sure that you've got safety out there, and you've got a data dashboard that's showing safety is of a concern. So I just think that there's been enough mitigation steps in showing and being transparent. And, as board members in our comments, we're making it known, look, we hear you, and we know this is challenging. Teachers, we hear you, we still love and appreciate your work. I think it's just the messaging of, we're not just swinging wildly an idea.
And that was.
And we're honest.
Yeah.
We're very honest with everybody. We'll say, I don't know the answer to this.
Yeah.
I don't, and you'll say, I don't know the answer to this, but this is what, we're trying to figure out.
The
And I
feedback-
think that honesty makes a big difference,
Yeah,
too.
I agree with you. I think that the feedback I asked that question to the parent group last night, and their response is very similar to what we're saying, that, first of all, and every one of you do this every time also, we respond, and we respond usually within 24 hours. And we're picking up the phone call, and the principals have been great. I mean, every Wednesday, Lisa knows because she's on the meeting. Every Wednesday when we have our principals meeting and central office, what we call the principals meeting, and the APs, we talk about communication. We say that in crisis, which we are, we sometimes forget it because now it's October, you can never communicate enough, okay? But as you just said, Dr. Ward, but you also have to say, I need to get back to you, we're not really sure of that. And I had last night, today, and again, Andy and Tom and other people, and Carrie, of course, have helped, but there were 4 or 5 questions that were asked that I didn't want to just wing an answer, because one thing I've learned, if I give an answer, then that's the answer that's going to be on social media. So, I rather like, oh my God, let me get back to you.
Yeah.
And then and then those people, I said, it would be most helpful if you could put that question in writing to me. And many of them, maybe they all did. So because I asked that to a couple other superintendents recently. We had a meeting Tuesday morning. And I'm not praising, but in a sense I am. Not every place is doing that.
No.
Even much smaller school systems. It's an email that just goes into email world,
Yeah.
But I just been curious at the last few school board meetings, and again, I don't see it as a bad thing, because this community has completely demonstrated if they have an issue, they're not
They're
going
gonna
to
tell
be
you
shy
about
in
it.
communicating it, so.
Yeah.
I can tell you that from just a parent perspective, Dr. Kisner talks about over-communication in times of crisis. And that message has been heard by the schools, because I have a freshman, so she's starting high school virtual. But I have communicated with her principal, and I said, I want to thank you for whatever you're doing with these teachers, because the communication is relevant and it's timely that we get from the teachers. And she has 4 teachers this semester. And I've made it a point to email the teacher back and said, I just want to thank you for your timely and relevant communication, because as a parent, I don't feel like it's wasteful or something that I'm wasting my time on. It's something that I actually asked my kid about. Did you do this?
Yeah.
This teacher's giving you a chance for a retake. That was today. Did you avail yourself of that? So I think that that's really important from the stakeholder perspective, and I'm feeling it. And I have been very, very pleased with the level of communication and the fact that they're not sending me just stuff to be sending me as a parent.
Yeah.
It's stuff that I need to know as a parent so I can communicate with my child.
Right.
So I've been pleased with that, and I've communicated to the school and to the teachers, because I want the teachers to know that I appreciate that as a parent, especially having a freshman.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think if we'll keep working on this flow chart, and then, like I said, we do have a work session
Yeah,
coming
get
up.
feedback that way.
So we can definitely, get it to a place where, we're comfortable with restructuring ourselves as an organization, and then as well as getting our other board members' input, questions, concerns, and, maybe even in a different format. I don't know. So if there's anything else, just send it to Missy so that we can get this out to the other board members so they have a time to look at it, play with it, ask questions or whatever, to be ready for our work session on it. The next section we're going into is new business, and I know Dr. Warner brought up to me about collective bargaining, and so Lisa said that she would kind of update us on that, so we would know what is entailed with that as we go
Yeah,
forward.
I don't know if we're gonna, I know it's something we're gonna have to address because of the new legislation. And so if you could just maybe give us a preliminary and then
Thank you.
let us know if this is something, we're gonna have to discuss as a committee.
Well, it's not something that you have to really talk about for this year. It's because the law is not going into effect until May 1st, 2021. So it was pushed back. I think it was because of COVID, but with the collective bargaining, it does allow local governments to adopt an ordinance or the school board to adopt a resolution that would allow collective bargaining. So I just kind of outlined it here on the first page and gave you what the code sections are in the back to let you see what the law is now versus what it will be May 1st of 2021. But there is no requirement that a local government adopt an ordinance. There is no requirement that a school board adopt a resolution to allow it. It's something that is permissive and it's not mandatory. It doesn't apply to constitutional officers or state employees. It's pretty much local governments, which includes schools in the definition. There is a provision in there that basically says also that if a majority of public employees in a unit, but the law doesn't define what unit is, certifies that they want collective bargaining, then the school board or the local government has to have a vote within 120 days. Again, there is no requirement that either allow collective bargaining. And the other two statutes that I included is that even though school boards may allow collective bargaining come May 1st, 2021, strikes for public employees is still a no-go, even if there is collective bargaining, because we don't allow public employees to strike in Virginia. As a matter of fact, if such an employee decided to strike, that person is deemed to be automatically terminated and may not be reemployed for 12 months. And the last one that I included was also part of the package with the collective bargaining. It just basically says that you can have an association like the Stafford Education Association represent employees.
Let me ask you a question. Does it say what can be, so I was a superintendent in Rhode Island for 6 years, which is a very strong collective bargaining state. You could collective bargain everything, which they did, more than just salary and wages, working conditions, you name it. But in neighboring Massachusetts, you could only bargain on salary and wages. So does it say in Virginia?
So the only thing that it does say is that even if there is collective bargaining that's allowed, it wouldn't restrict the governing body's authority to establish a budget or to appropriate funds. Because school boards, you only get the money that you're appropriated. So really that's the thorny part of this. And from what I'm hearing from this lawyers group that we have a conference call every week, is that they think that in the upcoming General Assembly session, this is going to be amended.
Amended to allow them to,
Well, it's going to be amended to recognize the fact that perhaps school boards can't raise revenues. So it's kind of hard to collectively bargain about the one big thing that employees want, and that's wages, and that's increased salaries. So, the collective bargaining would have to be about working conditions. The state even sets forth what the grievance process looks like for teachers. So you can't really collective bargain that because that's already set forth in statute. So some of the things that you're talking about, Dr. Kisner, is what exactly can be collectively bargained. I wouldn't be surprised if there was something that comes up in the upcoming General Assembly session that addresses some of those issues. Because this is a very vague law. It's pretty vague.
I know, they said
That's
that
what
in the
you want me to
legislative committee, that it was very vague, but it also, like you said, we aren't the appropriating body, so we can't really do anything with that information, and I just was curious how that would work.
it's a very hard mountain to climb, but the School Superintendent Association, we hope the School Board Association would join in. Matter of fact, they should be leading it. we're adopting our legislative policies, and we've had this the last few years. It doesn't really go very far, but we finally got a sponsor. I've got somebody from Roanoke, I think, that school boards would have the authority to levy funds. Okay, and, you know, Virginia, of course, doesn't happen. Now, your municipalities, they're not gonna wanna give up that power, but if, you know, you guys face this, every school board faces this every day. You're getting a lot of requests for things, and then you would like sometimes to say yes, but you know you can't say yes because you don't have the funding
Yeah.
to support it. But our association feels strongly that we want you guys to have the ability to levy funds to support your school budget. But in Virginia, it's going to be very hard.
Amazingly, 2 years ago, Mark Cole sponsored it on behalf of Spotsylvania School Board, because they asked for it, and he ended up putting that legislation in.
It's a very anti-tax state. It is.
I think you're going to see Fairfax School Board, if I read correctly, was interested and may still be interested before they change the date. And obviously being the largest school system in Virginia, that will have some power to go ahead and adopt a collective bargaining agreement. Now, I'm going many months ago when this,
I actually heard that last week in our group that some of the Northern Virginia school divisions were considering adopting a resolution.
yeah.
Well, it just doesn't seem like the resolution would hurt us one way or the other, because there's so many limitations to what we can and can't do.
And
that's
I'll,
why I guess, you know,
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of review it, and at some point, obviously, and I think I said to Ms. Randall, I don't think we have to worry about this year, but at some point, you know, we may have to address it.
Yeah, I think that there could be some amendments that we want to look at.
and, you know, the argument against and for are actually the same, but they're different. And so Virginia, you might have saw it came out today again, the state average or median, I forget if it's average or median salary for teachers, Virginia again ranked very low. And so the question is, well, how are we ever going to make it better? And so, you know, the argument is, for those who are against collective bargaining, and I understand it's very, very contentious issue. I mean, I understand. And I'll be honest with you, as a superintendent, I have my professional and personal thoughts, and they actually are different. I just have to tell you. But anyway, so you know, what you hear is why Virginia, and it's not just school people, you know, it's public employees, right? Are there any limit? Yeah, public employees. That public employees in Virginia are behind pay nationally. So this is what, so people were saying, well, why do we need this? Need to look in the mirror. The reason why we need it, why people feel they need it, is because without it, look where we rank. And this might be the catalyst to finally get us the salary and benefits that we believe we deserve. So the argument is really like, yeah, if the municipalities were more responsive to then we probably would never have this bill in front of us. Well, the bill's already been in front of us, already passed. And so, you know, it's, but I'd just be very surprised in Virginia if it goes to the point where a school board would, in a sense, dictate to a board of supervisors. You know, we're giving our teachers 5% raises because we just bargained and got that agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, here's your budget. We're not giving you any more. You can still get 5%. You're more than welcome to, but just take it out of your.
This is all you
existing budget.
get.
You'll have to lay off 220 people, but go ahead and do that.
Right.
Well, and that was one of the arguments that the VSBA made in lobbying against this particular bill, is that it could be a robbing Peter to pay Paul. Is that, you know, you could end up with higher salaries for your employees, but at what cost? Where's that money going to come from? Something's going to get cut somewhere.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Lisa.
Sure thing.
appreciate that. All right, so we're not having our November meeting since we're going to be working our service. And so, meeting adjourned.